Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. Going to have a look at the weather next week, same days for today's video. This will take us to around the 25th of January, so we're going up towards the final week of the month with this update. So we've got colder weather digging in today. We've had a wet morning across England and Wales. Most of that is moving away, and that's going to leave us with a cold run of northwesterly winds. Those winds will bring in lots of wintry showers to the northern and western parts of the country through the course of tonight and tomorrow. Could be accumulations of snow, even to low levels across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and northwestern England, probably North Wales too. By the end of tomorrow. And maybe some wintry showers even going further south and east about. Then all eyes will be on Wednesday night, when I think we are going to produce quite a storm system. And that could bring some severe gales to parts of England and Wales with heavy rain, and also some snow to parts of Scotland. So that's where we'll start off with today's video, and then we'll have a look at the next week to 10 days. So we'll begin by having a look at the facts charts. These charts are the human interpretations of models by the forecasters at the UK Met Office. This is the facts chart for midnight on Thursday, so midnight Wednesday to Thursday. And it's this area of low pressure just here, moving in off the Atlantic, that's going to give us this blow of very strong winds, heavy rain, and also the chance of snow. This flow is coming into cold air, so on its northern and eastern flank, that's where we've got the risk of snow, and that's primarily for Scotland. On the northern flank of this low pressure, the winds are lighter, so it's on the southern flank of the low pressure we've got the strongest winds. That's where we've got these very tightly packed isobars. And that's telling us that overnight, Wednesday to Thursday, we could well see gale, if not severe gale force winds moving in across the country. So it is going to be a proper old blow, I think, overnight Wednesday to Thursday. This is the facts chart for midday on Thursday. The low pressure by then is moving off in towards the North Sea and Denmark. You notice very tight packed ice bars there, so there will be more stormy winds over North Sea and into Europe on Thursday. For us, things are calming down, and we're reverting back then to that cold northwesterly flow, which will return us back to wintry showers, particularly for north and west parts of the country, and that's how we'll see out the rest of the working week. So these are the wind gusts forecast by the GFS model for Wednesday night. This is starting at 6 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday night from the weatheroutlook.com. So you can see at 6 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday, we're seeing gusts of wind around sort of 20 to 30 miles an hour. So it's quite windy, but it's nothing too overly concerning. But you'll see across the Republic of Ireland, we've got these pink colours turning up. And that's where the stormy winds are beginning to get going. So we're talking about gusts by 6 o'clock in the evening across Ireland, and starting to move in towards the Irish Sea, probably around 60 to 70 miles an hour. So really starting to pick those winds up then. And then those very strong winds sweep across the country. You notice Scotland generally has quite light winds on the northern side of that low pressure, but that's where the air is colder, so there'll be a risk of some snow at that point. For England and Wales, that's where we have the strongest wind. So it comes across the Irish Sea by midnight on Thursday. We're widely seeing temperatures, wind gusts I should say, going to sort of 60, 70 miles an hour across England and Wales. But there is a swathe here through sort of northern England particularly, and also going down towards the northeast of England from sort of midnight to 3 o'clock in the morning, where gusts of wind up to 80 miles an hour are certainly possible there from midnight through to the early hours of Thursday. So really windy. That is enough to produce structural damage and travel disruption as well. I suppose the only good points of this is going through the middle of the night, so won't be that many people moving around. But certainly it needs to be kept an eye on this. It is a very significant blast of wind that's coming in there across the country. If I just show you the precipitation type forecast as well, you'll see that for England, Wales and Ireland we have outbreaks of rain midnight on Thursday, but for Scotland it has turned to snow. There's some purple colours in there as well, indicating risk of heavy snow, particularly through southern parts of Scotland. But it all moves out of way through the early hours of Thursday, and then we return back to those wintry showers, particularly in northern and western parts of the country as we go through into the end of the week. So a significant spell of stormy weather coming up. I suspect this will be our next named storm by the UK Met and Irish Met offices. So we'll need to keep an eye on it over the coming few days. Now, beyond this, we're going to have return to cold northwesterly winds at the end of the week. You may probably see us through to the weekend as well. But after that, it looks like we're probably going to see winds reverting back into the west again through the course of next week. So this very changeable, topsy-turvy sort of winter looks set to continue. These are the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts from the Penn State University website. We've got the ECMWF here on the top, and the GFS, which I'll look in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 80,000 feet is an area in the absolute high pressure, and low pressure are being moved around by the jet stream running above. But let's extrapolate low pressure and red to high pressure. So we find we've got a trough of below average heights to our west in the 7 to 10 day time frame. This is taking us from around the 23rd to the 25th of January. And then we've got this big ridge of above average heights, which is actually quite a long way because it's pulling out into the central part of the Atlantic. The jet stream is doing something a bit like that. We're not all that far from pulling down some colder air again, and I suspect we won't have to wait too long through this final week of January before we find this trough shifting eastwards and cooler air starts to move down from the north. Notice lots of red up here over top of the pole. That is northern blocking, but it's not quite in a position, in the right position, to produce anything notably cold for us at this point. Nevertheless, because the Azores high is pulling out into the central part of the Atlantic, it wouldn't take much to move this trough here that is just to our west in the 7 to 10 day time frame to move that east or southeast and start to pull winds back in from the north again. So I would expect we're going to, for the rest of January, we're going to keep seesawing between milder, wetter interludes and colder, more wintry type interludes. That's how I would guess the final sort of couple of weeks of January, or the final week to 10 days of January will play out. This is the GFS. Now, this is a little bit milder because we're raising the heights over France and to our south. So we've got the trough out to our west, but what we're doing with this, and there's the ridge pulling out into the mid-Atlantic, by the way, but what we're doing with this is that we're pulling up the air more from the central Atlantic as opposed to the northern Atlantic between the high pressure, so over France and Spain, and the low pressure that's out to our west. I suspect that it is based on the operational run of the GFS, and that would be the midnight run of the GFS. I would suspect that was a bit of a synoptic outlier, where it's raising that ridge over France and Spain. Like that. But if it came off, it would be a milder solution for the final week to 10 days of January. These are our GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. The red line here is a 30-year upper air temperature average, and we're going to be going colder on average in the next day or so. So we're starting up there quite mild, but temperatures are on the way down. It will be feeling pretty cold by the end of today for all places. By tomorrow, it'll be feeling very cold in those northwesterly winds. Brief spike up in the temperature there. That's as that low pressure comes in on Wednesday night, so there's a big warm sector associated with that, and that's the reason that snow is mainly just restricted to Scotland with that area of low pressure. But remember, it does bring stormy winds. That's the main talking point with that low pressure. And then once that gets out of the way into the North Sea early on Thursday, then the temperatures are dropping again, and then it looks like we keep it cold pretty much into the weekend, and in fact probably keeping it fairly cold maybe into the start of next week. There's a lot of scatter here. This is the 23rd of January. Just here around a week's time, and at that point there is a lot of scatter appearing, but I think the GFS, if anything, the ensemble anyway, if anything, has shifted a little bit this morning towards more members being on the colder side of things, even into the start of next week. So this final week or so of January is still producing a lot of uncertainty, but I think gradually we may be shifting towards slightly colder air hanging on, at least for the weekend anyway, and whether it will go on beyond that into next week, we'd have to wait and see. Overall, the next week is pretty cold though, and that's reflected here with the surface temperatures. These are the surface temperatures for Leeds. So starting off quite mild, this is 10 degrees just here. This is freezing just here. The ensemble start off quite mild for these, so just underneath 10 degrees Celsius. But by tomorrow, we're struggling to get the temperatures to around 2 or 3 degrees. And then you'll see that we keep it generally quite cold across Leeds in the north of England, right way through the rest of the week and into weekend. Now, there is a very gradual lift up in the temperature then starting to take place through this final week of January, this period just here. But you'll notice, again, lots and lots of scatter in there. In fact, there are some ensemble members that by this final week of January are actually producing ice days with temperatures staying below freezing all day. But other ensemble members are going quite mild. Notice that thick green line just there. That's depicting the operational run of the GFS. And you'll notice that throughout most of the extended period, really from this period just here, this point just here, through most of the extended range of the GFS, the operational run was just about the warmest ensemble member. So I wouldn't say it was a mild outlier, this morning's operational GFS, but it was certainly amongst the very mildest solutions on offer. And there are many solutions there that are quite cold. So I think this final week of January is still really quite uncertain. Going back to the height anomaly chart, I imagine it all hinges on whether we raise the heights to our south, such as we're seeing here, and if we do, we'll push up winds from the southwest, or whether the ECMWF solution is more likely, where we don't raise the heights to our south, and eventually on this solution you would expect that will push that trough eastwards and pull down colder winds from the north. Again, I haven't been through the ensemble members, but I would think that explains the split between the GFS ensemble members for this final week of January. Temperature anomalies from the 15th to the 23rd of January are generally coming out a little bit colder than average, particularly so to the north. It's not a big deviation, but it looks like another fairly chilly week coming up actually for central and northern parts of the country. A lot of Scandinavia turning quite cold as well, but many parts of Europe looking fairly mild in the week ahead. Precipitation anomalies from the 15th, 23rd of January coming out average to a little bit wetter than average across the UK, many northwest parts of Europe. In America, so eastern and southern parts of America are coming out colder than average with temperature anomalies in the week ahead. Been quite a cold time of it over in the eastern part of the states. That continues to the next week. The western states are still coming out significantly warmer than average with the temperature anomaly from the 15th to the 23rd of January. Precipitation anomalies look like that. Northern parts of the states a little bit wetter than average, or a little bit above average with precipitation. A lot of that will probably be snow, of course. Southern states coming out quite dry. So this how the GFS is looking for Friday. We've got rid of that storm, of course. That goes away overnight Wednesday to Thursday, and then we return back to these cold, showery northwesterly winds. So that takes us through to the end of the week on quite a cold, showery note, with a return to wintry showers in northern parts of the country. Saturday sees the wind going back into the north. Now, you remember when we did the Sunday roundup yesterday, the GFS had sort of eradicated this northerly at the end of the week and into next weekend. It's brought it back again. Now, so that's the reason that on the ensemble here, we're extending the cold temperatures out a little bit further than we was yesterday, because that northerly wind is being brought back, at least for the start of the week anyway. So Saturday is a cold day with winds back into the north. Sunday, we're trying to move an area of low pressure in from off the Atlantic. There could be fun and games associated with that, because it's not coming in with conviction and it's running in to quite cold air. You can see the elongation here in the isobars telling us that there's a weather front, and it is struggling to come up against this wedge of cold air that we've got sitting to our east. So maybe something a bit wintry could occur over this weekend as Bermuda air tries to push in. That's how things are looking by Monday, and by then it looks like Bermuda air is beginning to return back in from off the Atlantic. You'll notice again we've got an elongation in the isobars, but now it's generally to our east. So it's a bit of a struggle to push that milder air across the country on Sunday into Monday. It's a big delay, but eventually it does get across. But there is time for that to be changed, of course. And then let's go into next week. It looks like we established these milder west-southwesterly flows, and so we go off and running into quite an unsettled spell of weather. And in fact, that takes us up to day 10, which is Thursday, the 25th of January, where another quite deep area of low pressure is centering across Scotland, probably bringing another battering of gales and heavy rain across the country. Notice heights remain relatively high to our north, so again it would only take slight adjustments to instead of sending this low pressure in that direction, to send the low pressure in that direction and start to pull down colder air from the north once again. My guess is that the rest of January will continue to see this seesawing between milder, wetter and colder, more wintry interludes. And then we've got the east there finally. So again, we're into those cold northwesterly winds at the end of the week, bringing in wintry showers. Winds turning to the north by the time we get through to the start of the weekend. Those cold conditions stay with us into weekend as well. A little bit of a ridge over the country overnight, Saturday to Sunday. That could produce a fairly widespread frost. Then we've got low pressure moving in from off the Atlantic. That's returning us to quite gradually, and it's a slow process, but he's starting to return us to milder winds off the Atlantic again. And then next week, East Central wants to produce this unsettled spell of weather with low pressure coming in from off the Atlantic, bringing bouts of wet weather, and also for a time anyway, milder temperatures. That's how things are looking on day 10. It's all a little bit inconclusive, really, that heights remain rather high-ish to our north. You remember this area where we are consistently seeing fairly above average heights, if not blocking. It's not blocking, but fairly above average heights up here. That's the Norwegian Sea, and that's the area that we focus on in winter updates, where we've had unusually high sea surface temperature anomalies, or we did have unusually high sea surface temperature anomalies through the autumn. So it's interesting that that area has consistently had above average heights, if not genuine blocking, but it has had generally above average heights through the season. That's one of the factors, I suppose, in giving us a cooler winter, because so far, because the jet stream, instead of doing something like that, has typically been doing something like this. Let's just get rid of that and show you how the jet stream has generally been doing something a little bit like that. So that's how it's looking. It's all a little bit inconclusive, but I think the rest of this week we're facing a cold start with wintry showers in the north. Then we get our stormy spell midweek. We return back to those cold northwesterly, eventually northerly winds for the end of week and into the weekend. Over weekend, or later in the weekend, we're going to try to move the Atlantic in and warm things up. I think the Atlantic will eventually break through and warm things up. It might be a struggle, and so we should probably be thinking for late Saturday and into Sunday about the chance of something wintry happening as this transition tries to take place. Next week, I suspect we probably go into a milder, wetter spell for a time, but how long that would last and how long it would be before we find our way back into something cold and drier again, I think that is quite inconclusive. So up and down, seesawing between wetter and milder and colder and drier interludes. That's how it's been throughout winter so far, and it looks like that's how it's going to continue for the rest of January. I haven't had a look at the stratosphere today because there's not much to tell you, but GFS is continuing to back away from that sudden stratospheric warming, but it was pretty convinced about last week. The ECDF also not showing much in terms of stratospheric ones, so I haven't included that in today's video. We may have a look at it tomorrow. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.